Hey, let's see how this goes. Same old, same old. Let's see. When last we were reading, the gal had come to the door. Megan wasn't real happy with being interrupted from her breakfast, I think is what they'd said. Then they were, for some reason, talking about apes and... Okay, I'm going to read this last little bit. Let's see. This is Joanna. Woo, she said, I'm so tired and I think I've exposed my utter ignorance of what grows when. To the housekeeper lady, I reckon. What's her name? Something starts with a P. Partridge. And she says, aren't there runner beans this time of year? August, said Megan. Well, one has them any time in London, said Joanna defensively. 10, sweet fool, I said, and cold storage on ships from the far-flung limits of empire, like ivory apes and peacocks? Asked Joanna. Exactly. I'd rather have peacocks, said Joanna thoughtfully. Okay, that's the last we read. I'd like a monkey of my own as a pet, said Megan. Meditatively. That word she likes to use. Miss Christie. Peeling an orange, Joanna said, I wonder what it would feel like to be Amy Griffith, all bursting with health and vigor and enjoyment of life. Do you think she's ever tired or depressed or wistful? I said I was quite certain Amy Griffith was never wistful, and followed Megan out of the open French window onto the veranda. Standing there filling my pipe, I heard Partridge enter the dining room from the hall and heard her voice say grimly, Can I speak to you a minute, miss? Dear me, I thought, I hope Partridge isn't going to give notice. Emily Barton will be very annoyed with us if so. Partridge went on, I must apologize, miss, for being rung up on the telephone. That is to say, the young person who did so should have known better. I've never been in the habit of using the telephone or of permitting my friends to ring me up on it, and I'm very sorry indeed that it should have occurred, and the master taken the call and everything. Why, that's quite all right, Partridge, said Joanna soothingly. Why shouldn't your friends use the phone if they want to speak to you? Partridge's face, I could feel, though I could not see it, was more dour than ever as she replied coldly, It's not the kind of thing that has ever been done in this house. Miss Emily would never permit it. As I say, I'm sorry it occurred, but Agnes, I guess it's Woodall, or Woodell. The girl who did it was upset, and she's young too and doesn't know what's fitting in a gentleman's house. That's one for you, Joanna, I thought gleefully. This Agnes who rung me up, miss, went on Partridge, she used to be in service here under me. 16 she was then, and come straight from the orphanage. And you see, not having a home or a mother or any relations to advise her, she's been in the habit of coming to me. I can tell her what's what, you see. Yes, said Joanna, and waited. Clearly there was more to follow. So I'm taking the liberty of asking you, miss, if you would allow Agnes to come here to tea this afternoon in the kitchen. It's her day out, you see, and she's got something on her mind she wants to consult me about. I wouldn't dream of suggesting such a thing in the usual way. Joanna said, bewildered, but why shouldn't you have anyone to tea with you? Partridge drew herself up at this, so Joanna said afterwards, and really looked most formidable as she replied, "It has never been the custom of this house, Miss. Old Mrs. Barton never allowed visitors in the kitchen, excepting as it should be our own day out, in which case we were allowed to entertain friends here instead of going out, but otherwise, on ordinary days, no. And Miss Emily, she keeps to the old ways. Joanna is very nice to servants, and most of them like her, but she has never cut any ice with Partridge." "It's no good, my girl," I said when Partridge had gone and Joanna had joined me outside. "Your sympathy and leniency are not appreciated. The good old overbearing ways for Partridge, and things done the way they should be done in a gentleman's house." "I never heard of such tyranny as not allowing them to have their friends to see them," said Joanna. "It's all very well, Jerry, but they can't like being treated like slaves." "Evidently they do," I said. "At least the Partridges of this world do. I can't imagine why she doesn't like me. Most people do. She probably despises you as an inadequate housekeeper. You never draw your hand across a shelf and examine it for traces of dust. You don't look under the mats. You don't ask what happened to the remains of the chocolate souffle, and you never order a nice bread pudding." "Ugh," said Joanna. She went on sadly, "I'm a failure all around today, despised by our Amy for ignorance of the vegetable kingdom, snubbed by Partridge for being a human being. I shall now go out into the garden and eat worms." "Megan's there already," I said, for Megan had wandered away a few minutes previously and was now standing aimlessly in the middle of a patch of lawn, looking not unlike a meditative bird waiting for nourishment. She came back, however, towards us and stopped and said abruptly, "I say, I must go home today." "What?" I was dismayed. She went on, flushing but speaking with nervous determination. "It's been awfully good of you having me, and I expect I've been a fearful nuisance, but I have enjoyed it awfully. Only now I must go back because, after all, well, it's my home and one can't stay away forever, so I think I'll go this morning." Both Joanna and I tried to make her change her mind, but she was quite adamant. And finally, Joanna got out the car and Megan went upstairs and came down a few minutes later with her belongings packed up again. The only person pleased seemed to be Partridge, who had almost a smile on her grim face. She had never liked Megan much. I was standing in the middle of the lawn when Joanna returned. She asked me if I thought I was a sundial. "Why?" "Standing there like a garden ornament, only one couldn't put on you the motto of only marking the sunny hours. You look like thunder." "I'm out of humor. First Amy Griffith." "Gracious," murmured Joanna in parentheses, "I must speak about those vegetables." And then Megan beetling off. I thought of taking her for a walk up to Leg Tor. "With a collar and lead, I suppose," said Joanna. "What?" Joanna repeated loudly and clearly as she moved off round the corner of the house to the kitchen garden. "I said with a collar and lead, I suppose. Master's lost his dog. That's what's the matter with you." And this is the third part of the chapter. I was annoyed, I must confess, at the abrupt way in which Megan had left us. Perhaps she had suddenly got bored of us. After all, it wasn't a very amusing life for a girl. At home, she'd got the kids and Elsie Holland. I heard Joanna returning and hastily moving in case she should make more rude remarks about sundials. Owen Griffith called in his car just before lunchtime, and the gardener was waiting for him with the necessary garden produce. Whilst old Adams was stowing it in the car, I brought Owen indoors for a drink. He wouldn't stay to lunch. When I came in with the sherry, I found Joanna had been doing her stuff. No signs of animosity now. She was curled up in the corner of the sofa and was positively purring, asking Owen questions about doggone it. Lost my place. Okay, no sign of animosity now. She was curled up in the corner of the sofa and was positively purring, asking Owen questions about his work, if he liked being a GP, if he wouldn't rather have been specialized. She thought doctoring was one of the most fascinating things in the world. Say what you will of her, Joanna is a lovely, a heaven-born listener. And after listening to so many would-be geniuses telling her how they had been unappreciated, listening to Owen Griffith was easy money. Money, 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 money. By the time we'd got to the third glass of sherry, Griffith was telling her about some obscure reaction or lesion in such scientific terms that nobody could have understood a word of it except a fellow medico. Joanna was looking intelligent and deeply interested. I felt a moment's qualm. It was really too bad of Joanna. Griffith was too good a chap to be played fast and loose with. Women really were devils. Then I caught a sideways view of Griffith, his long, purposeful chin and the grim set of his lips, and I was not so sure that Joanna was going to have it her own way after all. And anyway, a man who has no business to let himself be made a fool of by a woman, it's his own lookout if he does. Okay. Then Joanna said, "Do change your mind and stay to lunch with us, Dr. Griffith." And Griffith flushed a little and said he would, only his sister would be expecting him back. We'll ring her up on the car. We'll ring her up and explain, said Joanna quickly, and went out into the hall and did so. I thought Griffith looked a little uneasy, and it crossed my mind that he was probably a little afraid of his sister. Joanna came back smiling and said that was all right, and Owen Griffith stayed to lunch and seemed to enjoy himself. Into the dark chocolate orange bar. It's got a little almond in it. In my teeth. Wait a minute. Joanna came back smiling and said that was all right. And Owen Griffith stayed to lunch and seemed to enjoy himself. We talked about books and plays and world politics and about music and painting and modern architecture. We didn't talk about Limstock at all, or about anonymous letters or Mrs. Saint songs. Suicide. We got right away from everything, and I think Owen Griffith was happy. His dark, sad face lightened up, and he revealed an interesting mind. When he had gone, I said to Joanna, "That fellow's too good for his own. That fellow's too good for your tricks." Joanna said, "Oh, this is what she did." Joanna said, "That's what you say. You men all stick together. Why were you out after his hide, Joanna? Wounded vanity?" "Perhaps," said my sister. The number 4, part 4. That afternoon we were to go to tea with Miss Emily Barton at her rooms in the village. We strolled down there on foot, for I felt strong enough now to manage the hill back again. We must certainly have allowed too much time. And got there early, for the door was opened to us by a tall, raw-boned, fierce-looking woman. Raw-boned? What it says? A fierce-looking woman who told us that Miss Barton wasn't in yet. "But we're expecting you, I know, so if you'll come up and wait, please." This was evidently faithful Florence. We followed her up the stairs, and she threw open a door and showed us into what was quite a comfortable sitting room, though perhaps a little over-furnished. Some of the things I suspected had come from Little Furs. It's F-U-R-Z-E. The woman was clearly proud of her room. "It's nice, isn't it?" she demanded. "Very nice," said Joanna warmly. "I make her as comfortable as I can." Now, let's see. As comfortable as I can. Not that I can do for her as I'd like to, and in the way she ought to have. She ought to be in her own house properly, not turned out into rooms. Florence, who was clearly a dragon, looked from one corner to the other of us reproachfully. It was not, I felt, our lucky day. Joanna had been ticked off by Amy Griffith and Partridge, and now we were both being ticked off by the dragon Florence. And I'm going to have to stop there. So sorry, y'all. Come on, bookmark. Come on, you can do it. Here we go. Y'all have a good night. I'm going to try to get some stitching done. Lord, it's a struggle every day. And I just won't give in to taking naps. Except little ones like that. What is wrong with me? And it has been cold today. It's not all that bad. It's just me, I reckon. Still on the antibiotics. Throat not sore. Nor ears bad or anything. So, thank you, Lord, for the healing. I'll see y'all tomorrow at 5 bells. Love ya. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye.